All right, what is going on, everybody? Back for our week 3 contest review. For those of you who have been keeping up, myself and Max Steinberg here have been breaking down the main slate each and every Monday, trying to give you guys some ideas about how to use Contest Flashback, and just kind of takeaways here, right? Things we can learn and use for future slates here. So, Max, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. As always, I love doing this, and I just want to reiterate, I just think this is so valuable because when we're building lineups prior to contest locking, we don't know how actual ownerships are going to play out and who's going to get higher ownership than we think or lower ownership. So it's interesting to review this just so we can hone our process in where these theoretical high ROI lineups that we're making actually end up being actual for the contest higher ROI lineup. So excited to look into this again. We're flying blind, so let's just get into it.
Yeah, we haven't really taken any time to review this. I know I haven't. So we're going to start with the Wildcat here, and then we're going to hit a couple other contests along the way. So hoping to get some info from all these different contest types here. So let's jump into the Wildcat, and let's go over to these lineups here. So let me get rid of this contest tab. That way we could see multiple lineups. So we're just sorting here by Sim ROI, looking at the top Sim ROI lineups to start. And Max, take it away. I feel like this is where you kind of flow.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that stands out to me is seeing 2 Kirk Cousins lineups. So I'm actually curious, how much ownership did Kirk Cousins get in the Wildcat in actuality? Because he was the chalkiest QB projected. And I think something that's interesting here. About 20%, right? So, for a 5,000 person contest, that's a high stakes contest. That's not that high. I think we had him projected maybe 16%. And if you went to higher stakes, it probably was more like 20%. And, it's interesting, right? Because probably a lot of people are like, want to find the non-chalk QB. But something that I've been thinking about lately as we've been doing this contest review is I think the quarterbacks that get you real in danger are the ones that you think are not going to be chalky and then get kind of steamed up. And with someone like Kirk Cousins, where it's kind of so obvious, I actually think they end up being okay plays. And I actually made a Kirk Cousins stack in one of my Wildcat lineups just because I thought, he's really good. Justin Jefferson's really good. This is a high over-under game. There's a reason why everyone's so attracted to the stack, right? Like a Justin Jefferson, Osborne, Madison, maybe Jordan Addison types of stacks. And I just thought, all right, I'm just going to go with this. And you can see Papa Gates, Ricky D, these are both sharp players. They're just going with the stack. And I think that's something to keep in mind is, again, it's like if something projects well, and it's really not going to get steamed up that much, that can be a part of a really good lineup portfolio. So that's what sticks out to me.
What did you think about, some of these other stacks? I would say kind of along the lines, I guess. It's interesting, right? Our top Sim ROI lineup is this Dolphins stack, and we all know how the Dolphins went on to score 70 points yesterday, right? One thing that's really standing out to me is like I see a lot of ownership in these lineups. I think like the sum ownership of a lot of these lineups is like, this lineup, the lowest piece is 2 at 8%, right? So even in the sim with all of this ownership above 10%, this lineup still grades out the best, which I find pretty compelling, interesting here.
Yeah. It just goes to show it's, if people are projected really well, SaberSim's just going to like the lineup, right? Just because they're all getting 10 to 20% ownership, if they're all really good plays, then that's just going to be the best ROI lineup. So definitely don't underrate perfecting your projections and trying to make projection adjustments that are going to help project players well. Because what this is saying to me is like, hey, as long as you're kind of playing the best plays, especially in like a 5,000 person tournament, you're going to do pretty well. And keep in mind as well, the Wildcat is not as top heavy, right? 250K to first. I think that's, 18% or something like that. Right?
Yeah.
carry the 2, it's a 1/6, so about 18%. So yeah, so it's just sort of like, hey, you play the best
16%
lineup
to
here.
players.
Yeah, you play the best lineup here, and that is going to do you well.
Right on. Well, if you're good here on the lineup screen, just looking at some of these top lineups, we're going to jump over to the users here. And then so we're going to jump over to what was the max for this? 150 max. So I think
let's see
our
if anyone did that.
pool of maxers is probably going to be small, but they're still here. So let me just sort by 150 so we can go ahead and sort or filter for 150 so we can sort by sim ROI here. And looks like Redcoat was our top sim ROI player. So I'm going to zone in on his lineups here. And did you want to look at any of his exposures, or did you want to go straight into his highest?
Let's look at his exposures first, because I'm just curious. Because Andrew and I had this thought, and we were just thinking, okay, why don't we try to show people what it might look like to create a really good bucket of high ROI lineups, right? And something that stands out off the bat is the stacks are not that big, interestingly enough, and that just makes me think it's interesting. Slate to slate, the amount of stacks that you should do or how big your stacks should get is not actually that sticky. It varies depending on who you're playing and who the best plays are. And that's really interesting to me. I wouldn't have expected that, but it just goes to show that sometimes heuristics are not going to be great if you like they don't fit everything. And I think I know why, but I'd love for you to share first on your thoughts on this.
Well, I just think that, I think something that we've seen the first 2 weeks here is that a lot of these big stacks have been grading out well. The QB +2s, QB +3s, stacks with run backs, right? A lot of these correlated plays that what we've seen have been grading out so well. And then here is a portfolio of somebody, maxing out this big contest where 80% of it is made up of a QB +1 or / with a run back. So not those big stacks that we've been seeing the last 2 weeks. So I'll let you take it. I'm interested to hear.
Why you
think so.
Right. Well, look at the play. So the first thing that stands out is when you look at the quarterbacks he used, right? You're going to see that Patrick Mahomes has pretty high ownership, right? And if we click on just Patrick Mahomes lineups, what you're going to see is, hey, there's a lot of skinny stacks in here. It's actually all skinny stacks. It doesn't even have a bring back, right? I'm sorry if this is still loading, but it's literally Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, literally no bring back, literally no nothing, right? And it's like, why does this lineup grade out well? Well, the reason the lineup grades out well is there is straight up no other values in Kansas City. They rotate like 6 different wide receivers, right? Chicago is always just horrible value because Justin Fields runs a lot, and they seem to just kind of jack up the prices of the pass catches there. And you know what? So what he did is he basically was like, hey, I'm using Patrick Mahomes. I like Patrick Mahomes. It makes sense. Chicago's defense sucks. Like, whatever his process is sort of leads him to say, hey, I don't need anyone else. I don't want anyone else. I'm not going to just get crazy just to be stupid. I'm just going to actually let the numbers speak and just make a bunch of QB +1 stacks here. And what do you know? The ROI of these lineups are really good, right? They're really good. And, that very, very smart by him to, not get bogged down to what kind of stack should I use? I need to do QB +2 with a bring back. In this Kansas City situation, that just was not smart. So he ended up making some 200% or 150% ROI type lineups in this contest, which is really good in a high stakes contest, just by sort of, just doing a bunch of skinny stacks with Patrick Mahomes, which you would think is not that contrarian, but I think it ended up being it because I'm sure a lot of people just try to use those heuristics and try to fit something different in.
What do you think about this basically every single Patrick Mahomes lineup here, because we are filtered for the Mahomes, have one. I mean, he used a ton of double tight ends here, is basically what I'm getting at. And
I saw that
you
too.
see 58% Dermot Smythe, which was a huge value, right? And then, followed by Musgrave at 3,300. And then you see all of this Kelsey in the flex, like primarily Kelsey. I'm actually interested in what his allocation looked like beyond Mahomes here. So let me just take this Mahomes filter off. So
I mean, I have a guess for you. Yeah. It's very interesting, but my guess is he's trying to take advantage of having some sort of contrarian type lineup by, it's like you have Mahomes. A lot of people don't like to use tight end in the flex. So my guess is he had some thought like, hey, I can get a really different lineup construction here if I just simply use Kelsey in the flex and then just use a ton of tight ends. And basically my line, I can just guarantee a kind of unique style of lineup because of doing this. That would be my guess. I've never done that before. I don't know if I'd recommend doing it, but it did end up working out very well. And yeah, it
and you
seems
can
like
make the
just a
argument,
lineup constructor thing.
like, yeah, Kelsey is a tight end, but is he really, right? He plays
Right.
so
Yeah.
different. So it's a double tight end, but it is Travis Kelsey, all things considered.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. This is definitely an enlightening thing. I mean, I'd say the last 2 weeks we've been doing this, kind of a lot of stuff has kind of flown in the face of don't put tight end in the flex because it seems like a lot of good players are doing it and a lot of the good players are doing it with success. So that's very interesting.
Right on. Well, if you have anything else you want to cover, I'm happy to move on to the next contest here.
I have one more thing because I was just looking. If you actually look at his Kirk Cousins lineups as well,
Sure.
they actually are skinny stacks, and I was curious if you had any thoughts about that because that's actually kind of contrary, right? Is you would think people would have game stacked this a lot, but what I'm noticing is he used a lot of just Cousins and Jefferson. Um, with just like a one charger bring back. And I just thought that was interesting as well. I don't know if I have a strong opinion about it, but again, it seems like this player likes to focus on creating a unique style of lineups, and that certainly is going to create a unique style doing just that skinny stack. Do you have any thoughts?
I think that, one thing that we've kind of talked about in past weeks is like, hey, how do you take a chalk stack and stack it differently? And we've talked about, adding more players. Well, they're looking at the Vikings here, who it's very common, like, okay, I'm going to take Cousins with, Jefferson and Hawkinson. I'm going to take, Jefferson and Osborne or Addison, like you said. And they went like the opposite way. They said, you know what, I'm just going to take the two best players and hope that, only they get used and not these other pieces, right? So I actually find that very intuitive and different.
Yeah. No, it's definitely interesting. He also, I mean, this did not work out. He used a lot of Josh Kelly in the bring back, which did not work out. But it seems like maybe he just had some particular game flow in mind. And maybe that's why these score well in the Sims, right? Is, maybe when you actually simulate these out, you know, there's like a particular set of Sims where Josh Kelly does well and Cousins and Jefferson does really well, and there's some sort of dynamic there. But I'm not as confident in that sort of idea. But I thought it was interesting.
I think the only other thing standing out to me here really is how much salary he's using here, right? Like max salary 49.9, max salary, max salary, max salary, another 3 max salaries here, right? Another all 49.9, and these are, what is grading out well in the Sims here. I think that, at the end of the day, right, projected score is going to be correlated to salary. That's how, the sites are doing their pricing and everything like that. And so I would say that, trying to just keep the floor of your lineups high by using more salary. Do you do anything specific with minimum salary? Like, do you leave it open? Do you leave it at the default? I'm curious.
I usually raise it to 49,000.
Okay, so even you're
I'm
staying
not,
tighter, right?
yeah, I
And
stay
I
a
think
little
the
tighter
default
than
is
the
like
default.
48.5 or something
It
like
is,
that.
yeah. Yeah. No, interesting to know. So
All
should
right.
we move on to the screen pass?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So through the Wildcat here, going to jump over to our next contest. And we are going to do did you want to do the screen pass first?
Sure. I think if I was ordering by contest size and it was like a 6,000
gotcha.
person 3 max.
All right, going to jump over here to the screen pass, and we are going to start with the highest sim ROI lineups here. So let's jump right in.
Yeah. Again, I mean, it's not like we're seeing anything new here, but I think Mahomes and Cousins were the most owned QBs. And, I'm kind of getting the sense of, foot NFL, DFS NFL in 2023 is you can kind of be contrarian by being chalky, right? It's like quarterbacks are just not going to get their ownership steamed up because people are just looking for the contrarian play. I mean, what sticks out to me is CJ Stroud ended up being
Right.
9% owned. And that was wildly unexpected, right? I actually used him in a Wildcat lineup thinking, oh, no one's going to use him. So that's really interesting to me, right? Is what is going on here? And I think, there's this sort of groupthink going on where people are trying to get contrarian at QB, and then what ends up happening is, hey, you just don't get contrarian at QB, and the ROI of your lineups are really good because they're not getting played enough. So wow, I mean that's just a really big takeaway for me here because Mahomes and Cousins, I thought they were going to be the two highest owned QBs, and they just weren't owned enough. And I think I ended up missing out on some value trying to be too contrarian and not realizing, hey, I just like play the best QBs.
I think that's like really interesting, right? It just kind of talks to like the market dynamics and how, DFS players in 2023 are thinking and what they're trying to do, right? So feels like a lot of people are, trying to out level each other and almost like find these good plays. Like Houston has been passing a ton. I think CJ Stroud has been the best rookie quarterback in his class so far, right? From all of his metrics. And so I see people, why would they gravitate toward him? I mean, he's 5,300 salary, they're passing a ton. So it makes sense, right? But then, getting back to your point, it's like, let's not overthink it too much here, right? It reminds me of that bell-shaped curve meme where you have like the guy on the left, like just play the best plays, right? And then you have all the people in the middle trying to like out level each other and think about it. And then you have the guy on the right, like just play the best plays. And that's kind of what I'm seeing from listening to you talk about, like, what, maybe we just need to like stay on the best quarterbacks and let everyone else like outthink themselves.
Yeah. I mean, with all of this, like let's say we knew what was going to happen in this contest, I would say, and it worked out actually, but I would say CJ Stroud Tank Dell stack was probably the worst stack, right? And it worked out, right? But I just want to like just make this point is, if you have a quarterback that's ended up going to be steamed up, even though he doesn't project that well, and a player who's going to be steamed up, even though he doesn't project that well, that is a recipe for a really bad lineup. And it's good to know. It's like, I don't know exactly why this happened, but I think the thing is something feels like a really sneaky play and feels like a really good play. That's maybe when your cautious alarm bell should be going off, being like, hey, maybe I shouldn't actually be doing this. Because maybe this is going to be more on. Maybe I think I'm being sneaky, but everyone else does too. Well, I mean, wild ownership. This is crazy to me.
Yeah,
Wild
Tank
ownership.
Dell at
Yeah.
29%. I mean, somebody that I actually like boosted a little bit was Robert Woods. I thought that, Nico Collins played so well the first 2 weeks, a lot of steam on Tank Dell. I really thought they were going to kind of ownership would gravitate toward these two guys. And I felt like Robert Woods was in this environment and was going to be like the lowest owned out of the bunch. Ended up not doing well, but trying to take advantage kind of what I thought the industry was doing this week. But yeah, I think that the point you made, right? That ultimately there are a lot of people playing DFS, building lineups, and I think that a lot of, like, how do I say this? You're more often than not, you're not the only person with a specific idea, right? So if you're trying to come up with this way to get off the chalk or the sneaky play like you're talking about, like, chances are somebody else is probably thinking about that too. So, might be a good time to ring those alarm bells, like you said.
Yeah.
Should
we look at users?
Here. Oh, yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, let's just look at users. Yeah.
So this was a 3 max. We'll probably have a lot of people max entering this, but we can still jump in here. And we're just
let's look at
grab these top.
Mr. Black. Congratulations.
All right.
So this is interesting, right? Oh, wow. This is really interesting, right? Because, I mean, the Chiefs do just projected really well, and it actually seemed like one of the only spots where you could actually play them with some offense, just because the Bears don't really need to do well for Mahomes to do well. But what this says to me is, I think SaberSim really liked Mahomes and really liked Kelsey, and we're very high on them. And because of that, they didn't get enough ownership. And because of that, they ended up being really good plays. So this person just only using Mahomes stacks and putting Pacheco in there too, I think is totally fine. He basically is the only other player who projects well on the team. I think that was an interesting play. And, doesn't even seem like this person got very contrarian in other places. I see Marquise Brown and Devontae Parker. I saw Devontae Parker and some other high sim ROI lineups. I think that was really interesting with the terrible weather. People just get thrown off that game, but a value receiver like him can still have a pretty good game in that scenario. So I think that's sort of interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think this just speaks more to just how much SaberSim like Mahomes to Kelsey.
I definitely agree with you there. Don't see nothing, that we kind of haven't touched on. I think it definitely finding our trend for this slate here.
Yeah.
But with that said, do you want to move on to the screen pass here? All right.
The game changer, right?
Sorry. Yes, this was the screen pass. All right.
Yeah.
Let me just.
The game changer, it's right there. Yep. So this is single entry, high stakes.
1,500 entry. All right.
Yeah.
Do you want to start with ownership trends, or do you want to go right to the lineups?
Well, you know what? Why don't we just look at my lineup? Do you want to see? Yeah. Let's see how I did. I'm M Steinberg 09, where I should be.
Oops, sorry, I'm on entrance.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, positive sim ROI. So basically, let me just walk you through my thoughts here. So, I was really from our videos before, I've been really thinking about how it really seems like in these contests where there is a lot of money to first, that finding a stack that is going to be in that 2 to 5% owned range with the quarterback is really beneficial. And thinking about everything, looking at SaberSim's projected ownership, I just thought Lamar Jackson was just not going to be landed on as much as some of these other spots. And I just thought there's going to be steam on Trevor Lawrence. I thought there's going to be steam on Deshaun Watson. And so it's going to cause Lamar Jackson to be under-owned. And really easy to stack here, given Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews are basically going to be the only people who are going to project really well when Lamar Jackson does well. Obviously had 2 bringbacks with Zach Moss and Michael Pittman, and then just some, just basically in my view, actually chalk the rest of the way. I really like Jameer Gibbs. I really like Josh Kelly, and I really like Braxton Berrios. So this had a really high projected ROI for how I was adjusting things. And hopefully I was right. I think that Lamar Jackson ended up not having that high ownership. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but we could take a look if you want.
I actually ended up on a lot of Lamar Jackson as well. I think that, I was thinking about a lot of our previous conversations. He ended up coming in 6% in this contest. And I was looking, high upside quarterbacks kind of in that second tier. And I thought Lamar was a really good play as well. He ended up doing well, like on an actual point basis, even though they only scored 19 points as a team. I felt like they underperformed, all things considered here. He got a lot of points with his legs here. So was hoping for a little more domination by Baltimore myself, but kind of similar thoughts there for sure.
You know what's funny though is just looking at how the ownership played out is, if I had a crystal ball and I could have seen this, I just would have played Justin Herbert. And I think probably a lot of people would have too. Because that's just way too low for a player like him. And we had two people, like everyone loved Mike Williams, right? And people definitely like Keenan Allen. So it's just funny to see his ownership get that low. But I thought maybe people just thought this game was going to play out differently.
And where is Keenan Allen? Let's see. I'm not even seeing him on the top here. So he only ended up coming in 10% owned here with
that makes sense though, because people just didn't stack Justin Herbert. So he wasn't as much of a value play. So my guess is just people were not going to play him that much as
people playing a ton of one-off Mike Williams here. I think that, one thing that I think I've seen here, I've seen in other sports as well, is that sometimes a lot of people will look at, what is like the chalk game on the slate and really just kind of take one side and like almost ignore the other side as like a viable stacking part. They might take a piece or 1 to 2 pieces, but they really won't stack the other side of that game. And I think that's what, why this ownership, if this were, we were looking at some type of like balance thing, like we see this like huge, Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson on this side of them. We see like the Justin Herberts, the Keenan Allens, like way low on the other side. And I don't know why that happens. Do you have any thoughts about like why everyone just gravitates to one side of this game environment that is supposed to be good for everybody here?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think what ended up happening with this one was Minnesota early in the season has kind of been notorious for playing a sort of defensive style that is like 2 deep safeties and not a lot of men in the box. And they've been run all over. And I think people just thought, hey, the Chargers going to run all over them. This is not going to be a great pass setup. And I think, people got too attached to that. And it wasn't actually that bad of a thought because I looked at the game and it turned out that the Chargers threw a lot of short passes, and that's how they ended up exploiting that defensive strategy. But wow, I mean, Justin Herbert had such a good game. It feels really stupid in hindsight to not want to play him when he was just with that ownership. He's such a good play. So something to keep an eye on is sort of just like narratives around defenses and matchup, because people love matchup type stuff. And I think in that case, people got too obsessed with the matchup.
Right. I'm hearing it. Yeah. I think that, these, I'm also curious what you think of this. What do you think about like, do you ever like look at the spreads of the game and try and, make a decision about like, hey, this is going to be like more blowout type, or it's like, the over under was high and it was like a -1 spread, right? As opposed to, you go and look at like some other type of game, like, let's take that Lamar Jackson one where they're like a much bigger favorite. They ended up losing, but I'm curious if you let that affect your mentality going in at all here.
No, I don't. And I think after seeing the Dak Prescott thing last week, remember where it's like Jets, Cowboys, and basically Dak Prescott went 1% owned and ended up being the theoretical best lineup. It's one of those things where it's like whatever value you're getting from it is negated from everyone else taking into account. So,
That makes sense.
yeah, I think it's really bad. I was looking through the lineups, and I would love for you to scroll down to the ninth best lineup,
Sure.
if you don't mind. It's this guy BGR Seth.
Um,
Maybe I'm sorting by risk
oh,
adjusted ROI. Could you
oh, okay.
sort by risk adjusted? It's next. I mean, the reason I want to look at this is this guy BGR Seth, who I think is the number one rated Roto Grinders player. So like really, really good player. And one thing I noticed here is he has a secondary stack that's a 3 secondary stack. And I think this is a lineup that most people would straight up not use, like they would actually filter out of their pool. Um, and I mean, like something stands out right off the bat. One is it's one of our highest rated ROI lineups, and two, one of the best players in the NFL, DFS NFL, used it, right? So,
Right.
what that says to me is, again, it's like there's heuristics about, build a QB plus 2 with a bring back. Like, don't secondary stack 3 players, don't secondary stack 2 players, right? And it is so dependent on what is going on, right? I think what this says to me is if you have a strong enough offense, you don't need to just like use the quarterback stacking someone else if you're also having a 3 stack somewhere else and you like that 3 stack too, right? There's not like a one size fits all heuristic on how you should build your lineup. So that was interesting to me.
I think that one thing kind of standing out to me here is what you said. I think that I'm not gonna like speak as if I'm this person, but it seems like they just they're okay with a more boomer bust kind of style approach here. And you can see that from some of these contest metrics, right? Like the win rate for his lineup is 0.96%. And this is the ninth ranked lineup by risk adjusted ROI. But that's actually the third highest win rate if you look at the top 9. So although he's in ninth, it's the third highest win rate compared to these other lineups like 0.93, 0.8, 0.67, 0.8, right? And then, but you see that, the cash rate is lower and the ROI standard deviation is higher. So that just kind of tells me it's like, hey, I'm okay with this more boomer bust style lineup. I know that, it might not do great on average here, but they're, really optimizing for that first place win equity here. And that makes sense in this contest here that we said was, 25% to first, as opposed to like, say, the Wildcat where that was 16% to first and just a little different style. So I could see them adjusting their style for the contest that they're specifically playing here.
Yeah. And we don't have access to the Millionaire Maker yet. We're still working on how to do that because it's just so many lineups that's hard to process. But I think what's interesting is if you do sort by win rate, you can kind of get an idea of what contests, what kind of lineups would be better for, a Millionaire Maker style contest. And if you look at it, you can see, obviously we have Kirk Cousins, Mahomes, but you have Dak Prescott and you have Geno Smith. And again, if you look at the quarterbacks who are highest owned in the contest, Geno Smith was 2% owned and Dak Prescott was about 2% owned, right? So that just reiterates like,
Right.
Finding these 2 to 4% owned quarterback stacks, they end up for these really top heavy contests, for these really bigger contests, they end up really being the best lineups. And it's interesting, right? They're going to be, those types of lineups are going to be a leg down from what you think they are, right? It's like these third tier type of stacks that don't grade out for some reason well, where people think, oh, this is going to be a slow game. Like Josh Allen, right? Like Josh Allen was 2% owned in this contest. Why? It's like, oh, it's like a slow game. The weather is weird, right? And it's like all these factors that people are thinking about where they're like, hey, like I should stay away from this game. It ends up just like having the opposite effect where you actually should be playing these kind of weirdly uncertain spots where things don't look that good, but the quarterbacks are good. and they have upside, and they're going to have these upside games regardless of, the field is wet or the tempo is slow. So I thought that was super fascinating to me.
I think that, looking in this range, right, these are top players. This is Fire Dog, Utica here, right? And I think that this Utica lineup is specifically interesting because, one, it's a QB +2 with the running back, like game stack of Seattle, right? There's a lot of narrative of, the weather's going to be bad in Seattle. It's supposed to rain a ton. And, I know that, it looks like DK had a decent game here. I know Adam Thielen on the other side had a great game, right? So you take that, Mingo run back, you swap him out for Thielen, like all of a sudden this stack gets really good really fast with Geno, Metcalf, Thielen, and I think Kenneth Walker had a really good game, right? So I think that a lot of people wanted to stay away from Seattle because of this, Seattle rain narrative here, and then this ended up being a pretty high total game at the end of it all, and had a lot of good pieces in there that were going to be very low owned. So I do like this lineup specifically here.
Yeah, I think one thing to keep in mind as we're wrapping up here is I'll let you in on a little secret, which is grass and turf weather affects very, very, very differently. If it is raining and the stadium has turf, and you can look this up, it has much less an effect than if the stadium has grass. And the Seahawks play on turf. And so when I was looking at this game, I was not concerned about the weather at all. But I actually didn't like the stacks here. So I wish I thought about that further, because, when you have narrative like that with the weather, and it's just not there actually probably was never going to come to fruition in the way people thought. Wow. I mean, he really got lower ownership than people thought. And that ended up being probably a really, really good stack. So something to keep in mind.
Well, hey, you guys got a Max Steinberg on turf versus grass.
Yeah. Well, shall we wrap up?
Yeah. No. Do you want to give your final takeaways? We walked through these 3 contests here, looking at top sim ROI lineups, looking at top sim ROI players, finding trends. I feel like, this was kind of the first week here in these 3 weeks that really deviated kind of from what we had previously seen. So, just goes to say that, each slate is different here. There's going to be different slate dynamics and trends and narratives that really affect ownership, really affect the stack constructions that people are playing. And then that in turn affects, what should you do in response to some of these narratives and trends here. So I thought this was actually a very interesting week. Interested to hear your final takeaways.
Yeah, and just FYI, this is a single entry contest. That's why we're not sorting by users. But yeah, so my final takeaways. I think the biggest thing is chalk or not. I feel like chalk, from what I'm seeing, especially at quarterback, is just never going to be big enough chalk for me to worry about it if I actually like the play. And then, the real other really good plays, especially for these bigger field contests, are going to be the ones that are just again, these 2 to 4% ownership quarterbacks, like we've seen in the past. So, I think my biggest takeaway is when I'm trying to pick, my top lineup for these high stakes contests, or my top 3 lineups, I'm going to be kind of going towards just my favorite play, the best play from a value and projection perspective. And then hey, where is the narrative messy? Where are people just thinking this game isn't a great game to stack? Where are these people going to not be able to create a good QB +2 with the bring back, where I'm going to be able to get a quarterback at 2 to 4% ownership? And as we've seen time and time again, those are the most profitable plays. So I think that's my biggest takeaway here.
Right on. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode here. We'll be right back here next week for our next breakdown here. But until then, take care. Good luck in your contest. We'll see you all. Thanks. Bye.